The agenda for today is I'll give you an introduction about the variant management, the technical information behind it. What are the use cases? When do you use variants? Then we'll talk about version management in terms of what's the background to versions, and then when should they be used. There are differences between variant and version management use cases. The way they are used is very different, but there is some ambiguity or some confusion within the community when variant should be used versus when versions should be used. So I'll be talking about that. And we'll do a demo, have a look at the tool, how versions and variants are managed, and then at the end of it, we'll also be answering question and answers. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A channel, and we'll have people answering them. But we'll also take some question and answers at the end if there's anything left unanswered. Right. So the first thing about variant management. Variant management is about managing multiple copies of a particular model or a particular object within ARIS. As you know, ARIS is an object-oriented tool. Whenever you create a model or an object within it, there's a definition copy created in the background. However, if you want to reuse those models or objects in other scenarios, you can make copies of either the model or the object. And variant management is one such way of managing copies of either a model or an object. If I look at the database within ARIS, you usually have a model or an object in the database as a definition copy. As part of variant management, you can make copies of it. However, you do need a functional privilege called variant management functional privilege to be able to work with variants. So not everyone is allowed to work with variants, and there's a reason for it, that creating variants needs some knowledge of why it is created as a copy. We don't want everybody to go there and start creating copies of models and amending them. And that's the reason a variant management functional privilege was created. And it is allocated to some seasoned modelers or some administrators who then manage variants for projects or for different scenarios. So the idea is that for any model or an object, you have an option to create a copy of it. And creating copy as a variant allows you to retain the relationship with the master. So it actually creates a master variant relationship, and there is an option to compare the two to see how they are different, both at the model level as well as at the object level. So you can create variants of the whole model, or you can create a variant of an object. Having said that, when you create a variant, it actually creates a new definition of that particular model or an object. So the idea behind creating a variant is to have a copy of the master and then start amending it as per your liking. So if you want to copy over an object or a model for your own purpose, you can make a variant copy of it and then amend it. So you can amend its attributes, you can amend its relationships without affecting the master. So model and object variants will have their own GUIDs because they are two different elements within ARIS. So when you make a copy of them as a variant, it creates a new definition. What that means is that both of these are separate entities and they have their own GUIDs to identify them. In terms of working with variants, the idea is that when there is a situation where you want to manage some change in a certain situation, I will come to the use case shortly when do you create a variant. But if you were to create copies of models or objects and retain the reference to the parent, that's when you would maintain variants. So you make a copy of the variant of the master as a variant. In order to be able to modify the attributes of the model, in order to be able to modify the attributes of the objects, or add or delete objects, as well as any new relationships in the variant, as well as change their assignments. So if you have a model A, which has a variant model B, you can edit this model B without affecting the model A. What that means is you can add new objects to it, you can delete the existing objects, you can make changes to its attributes. So, for example, the model owner for variant B is somebody else from compared to model owner for model A. So you can change the variant properties at both model level as well as an object level. And of course, you can also change the relationships as well as assignments. So if you were to have uh, F1 as an object occurring in model A with an assigned FAD, you can have another F1 dash as a variant in model B with its own FAD, which has different relationships in the FAD. So, for example, the role carrying out F1 in model A is different from the role carrying out F1 dash in model B. So you can have these differences between the two models, and that's the reason we create a variant. Having said that, you also have an option to create multiple variants. So if the situation is that there's a generic order processing model that works differently depending on if it is a service order or a product order or a project order, depending on the processing type. If the models look differently and behave differently, then you can create three different variants of this particular generic order processing, and that's the business need behind it. So you have a generic model that is suitable for order processing, but then there are specific needs depending on what type of order processing you're carrying out. It's different for service management compared to product management. So the way you handle order processing for a service is different from that of a product, in which case you have two different variants of this particular generic model. So the idea is that you create different variants and then you have an option to compare them against what the standard was. So that's the gold standard, that's the generic or global standard, and then you have these variants which are specific for specific business scenarios, and you have an option to retain the relationship to say, okay, this was derived from this particular model, and then can compare the two as well to see the differences. And that's a standard capability within the tool. You also have an option to create variant of a variant. So you can have model B, which is a variant of model A, and then you can have model C1 and C2, which could be variants of model B. So in a situation where you're operating in multiple geographies, and perhaps the regulations are a little different in different parts of the world, you could actually have a variant model B, which is a little different because the risks and controls apply differently to model B. And then you can have model C1 and C2 derived from model B, which are more specific for some other regulation. So depending on your business case, you have an option of creating variants of variants, and all of this chain is retained as a relationship. So you can actually compare to see which was the parent of C1 and which was the parent of B. So you have this traceability or some sort of an audit capability to see how the model has evolved over time and how the variants have been created. Having said that, let's talk about the use cases. When do you create a variant? So a variant is a definition copy, as I said earlier. So when you create a variant, it is actually creating a copy of that model or an object, depending on the variant that you're creating, and which lives on its own, and you can edit them and their attributes as well as the relationships and assignments without affecting the parent, but still have that relationship maintained between the link between the master and the variant, so that you have the traceability from where the variant originated, as well as compare them. Uh, the variants could be created because of multiple project phases. If you have a long running project, a transformation project spanning 5 years, and you want to have multiple copies of a particular model evolving over time, then you create multiple variants. So you can have an as is master, and then multiple target models, say depending on different phases of the project delivery, to highlight the changes or the evolution of that particular model over time in the 5 year span. So you could have multiple target models. A quick win is something, say, a to be process that is going to be implemented quickly, and then there could be a long term to be process, which is say over 3 year period or 5 year period. So when you have all of these different models living simultaneously and can be edited simultaneously, in that situation you would be creating variants. So you would have an as is master and multiple target variants, and all of them can be edited simultaneously. Then you could have variants based on business needs. So if you have differences in geographical area, for example, the work that you carry out in Europe is different from that carried out in the Americas or in the Asia Pacific region, then you can have three different variants of a global process. It could also be because of some regulatory differences between these geographies, or because of certain regulatory practices or requirements. You could have different variant models to satisfy those particular requirements. The idea behind variants is that you can have these different copies all living together and being edited together, with the fact that there's still a relationship between the master and the copy, and you have the ability to track the change and compare them, and ensure that you have this link between the master and the variant. So you would use a variant depending on the business need or because of the project delivery, where you want to have multiple copies of that model all living simultaneously. So you can edit all of them together without affecting each other, and then also compare them. And another use case could be reference models. So if you're using industry best practices, either from Software AG's industry best practice models that's offered as the IPR database, or if you're using the business process repository from SAP or Oracle's Fusion's best practice models, you could take these reference models and then create variants out of them that are more specific to your business practices, or to your create your own blueprint, and then be able to compare your blueprint against the reference to see how divergent they are from the actual out of the box industry best practice, or the product SAP, for example. So you can compare what SAP's best practices compared to how it has been implemented within your organization based on your specific needs. So you'd be creating variant of the reference. So those are some of the use cases for managing variants, or why you would be creating variants in ARIS. Once you have created a variant, as I said earlier, the whole idea about creating a variant is to be able to track the changes and see how they are different. So be able to check the conformance of how one conforms to the master, or the variant conforms to the master. So you have standard reports in ARIS for model comparison, which give you a side-by-side pictorial difference, as well as differences in terms of tables, and it is exported in a spreadsheet format that's available out of the box. However, you have the capability of creating your own reports as well. There are APIs and methods in the reporting platform where you can create your own reports to bring out these differences in a different format. But there are out of the box reports which are quite handy and useful, which you can use for comparing the master with the variants. So the output is in Excel format, and it highlights the difference in a graphic format. Before I go to the version management, I would like to do a demo of the variant management at this point, so that it's easy to understand what we just spoke about. So if I go to ARIS, as I said earlier, the first thing that you need to have is a functional privilege called uh, variant manager functional privilege. So under privileges, functional privileges, you have this option called variant manager. And if you hover over it, it says create and manage variants in ARIS and ARIS Architect. I'll leave ARIS Architect out of the picture for now, because all the capability that's needed for variant and version management is within the Connect portal and the Connect administration and enterprise administration. So you don't need the architect for it. So variant manager is something that you would want to assign to seasoned modelers or people who understand ARIS as an administrator, and they are the people who would be creating variants of models. And once you have this privilege, then if you go to the modeling repository, in the modeling repository, looking at a particular model, you have an option to create its variants by this and then create variant. So it lets you create the variant. When you click on this, it creates another copy of this model and the objects within it. You also have an option to do the same thing by clicking here on the top, create variant. So whatever is available here on the app launcher is also available here on the top. So you can do it either ways. And once you've created the variants, they are available here for you to view. So currently there are no variants, but if I select this and say create variant, I'll create a variant in the same area. It takes hardly a few seconds to create the variant. What it is doing is it is creating a copy of that particular model along with all of its objects. And then you can rename this to something more meaningful. So this could be EU. So there's a global process and there's one specific to the EU. And now if you look at the variants tab here on the top, you can see that this particular variant has a master called car loan application global. So there's a global, which is the master, and then this is the variant. The same thing applies if I click here as well. So you can see that this the global has the EU version of it as the variant. So that's how the master and the variant are maintained, and it's good to have this relationship between them because then you have the capability to see how they are different and uh, 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 what's the need for the two to be different. Uh, this is one way of creating variant. You also have a different way of creating a variant. How you could do that is you could make a copy of this model, uh, copy, or you can perhaps copy the uh, whole folder as well. It's up to you. So you can either do this as a copy, or you can just copy this particular model. No matter how you do it, you can then paste that particular model either in the same area or somewhere else. Let me just paste it here. So if you have made a copy and then, yeah, let me rename it to say something to do with Latin America. So it's a little different because the regulations are different. Once you've created this copy, what I did is I did a copy and a paste rather than create a variant. So I didn't select this and create variant. Instead, I copied this model, the global model, and pasted it as a copy. And even in this case, I have an option to create a variant in retrospect. So at present, there's no variant available, but then I can select this and then click here and say create relationship variant relationship. So this I'm doing after I've created a copy. And I can say, okay, this is the variant. So now you can see that this global has two variants. It has a EU as one of the variants and LATAM as another variant. So these are the two ways you can create a variant. You can either select the model and click on variants and create a variant, or in retrospect, if you already have created a copy of a model, you can then create variant relationship and select the model which you think is the variant. In either of the cases, you get this master variant relationship, and you can see that information here. And as I said earlier, once you have done this, you have the option of comparing this. So if I were to compare the global versus the LATAM, I have this option of the report which I spoke about, compare models. That's a standard report that's available to you. You can say start, and then it asks you what do you want to compare, and then you can say, okay, compare the variants. Okay, so data within the database, master model versus variant. So you have different comparison options. I'm checking for master variant comparison. So that's the master model or model variants of the source model. And then it asks which one do you want to compare. You can either select all or one, or depending on whatever you want, uh, multiple comparisons. Let me just do one for now. And then it asks you some more options. What is it that you want to compare? You have a very granular way of comparing. You can compare positions of the objects if they're moved. You can compare uh, the system attributes. If you change the attributes, you can compare the alignment of connections and stuff. So there are a lot of things that you can compare here. But before I do that, I shall make a change to the latam, because at present I've just created a variant without any differences. Let me just make a change so that we can see how they're different. So I'm now editing the Latin America process to see, and then I'll compare them. Okay, so in this case, say I'll delete this, and I'll add a new task here, for example. Okay, so I made some changes, just a couple of them to show you uh, the comparing option. Okay, let's start compare now. Within the database, master and variant, and I made change to this, and okay. Okay, so it has created this spreadsheet model compare. I can download it and then view it. Okay, so it says that these are the two processes that you compared. It shows details about it and the path where it is residing. And then it gives you results about all of those different things that you had maintained as part of the check between the two models. And it then gives out options in graphical format as well as table. So you can see there are some things that have been deleted and then some things that have been created. So it gives you an output in a tabular format. It also gives you comparison details in at an object level. It says, okay, which are the objects and does it exist in this global process versus the Latin America process. And if this is too difficult to understand because it's a lot of information, I think the easiest option is to look at the graphics. In the graphics, you can, if I make it a bit bigger, you can see that there are some things highlighted here in red. So this and this thing has changed. That's the global process. So in the global process, the red things have gone missing in the LATAM process. So what it is saying is that this connection has gone and this object has gone, and this connection actually has been replaced by two connections because we added a particular object in there. So the rest of the model is the same. It's not, nothing else is highlighted except the fact that there's this new object that has been introduced, and then there's this object that has been deleted. So you can see the differences between them and then justify the reason for creating this particular variant. And if you think that the business or the regulatory need justifies why you have these two different variants of that same model, then of course you have done a right design. But if you think that as part of process standardization or as part of rationalization of your landscape, these processes ought to be the same and they shouldn't be different just because uh, there's no business need for it or regulatory need for it, then you can perhaps merge the two into one and decide that there should be one global process and you shouldn't have these two separate variants of it. Right. So that was about variant management and some ways of working with it. Next, I'll go to version management. So, as variant management, version management also has a prerequisite, and that prerequisite is that the database should be versionable. And that is something that you do right in the beginning when you set up your databases. It's not something that you can do in between. So, when you create your database for the first time, you decide whether it is a versionable database. And for you to be able to version your models, the database should be a versionable database. Having said that, the versioning is something that is triggered by a user, and that could either be manually by the user explicitly creating a version of a model, or it could be because of versioning, which is as part of a governance process, either a Connect mini workflow or the release cycle management process. But in both the cases, it is something that the user has triggered, either manually versioning it or starting a governance process. So versioning doesn't happen automatically. So while you're modeling, a version of the model is not created automatically. It is something that you need to either do it manually or it is done as part of a change management process. Now, versioning is different from variant management in the sense that the versioning doesn't create copies of a process as a living entity. In variant management, you could have multiple copies and work on all of them simultaneously. In versioning, it is about having a new release of the same process. So at a given point in time, there is only one version which is open for editing, and all the previous versions are for read only in terms of logging or traceability requirement. So all the results are available. The previous results are available as part of change list. So you could have one model undergoing multiple versions. In the first version, it looked like this as part of change list one, and then you versioned it the second time where you added some more content to that change list, and then in the change list 3 you added some more content to it. The idea is that the model that's undergoing change is retained as a copy. So it is about maintaining logs of the change that has taken place, the user who has created it, the timestamp, the reason why it was created. So while variant management doesn't need any reason upfront, you can create a variant as long as you're a variant manager. Versioning does need some sort of reason of why you're creating this particular copy, and that's not a copy. Actually, you're creating a snapshot of how the process looked the last time, and you don't have multiple versions of the same model that you can work on simultaneously. There's only one latest workspace version which you can work on. All the previous copies that you have created as part of a snapshot are all read only. So you can see all of them, but they're read only. You cannot edit any of them. So in the change list, when you create a version, the version can be one or more models together. So it's not that you just create a version of a model. You can include multiple models in one version. So if for example, you are releasing a particular project and the project has 100 processes that are undergoing change as part of it, then you can have a collection of those 100 processes released together as part of one change list or one version. You can version all of them together. You can version the whole database as well in one go if you were to. But the point to be noted is that the versioning is done at a model level at least. You cannot version an object. So the model is what is being versioned. And What it does is it takes a snapshot of the database, and every time you create a version, it includes delta information only. It doesn't take the full snapshot again and again. So if this was the first change list, it just takes the delta into account in the next change list versus the next change list. So it keeps adding those deltas together into multiple change lists as and when you version models. And all of these change lists with what was versioned in as part of scope of each change list is available in the administration section, which I will show you shortly. It creates logs, as I said earlier, and you can see who created a particular version, when was it created, and the reason why was it created. And the version data is read only. So you cannot have multiple copies of that model being edited simultaneously. So the idea of version is very different from variant. A variant is a situation where you're creating copies of the model which are all editable simultaneously. And the reason for creating a variant is because of a business need, and you want to manage multiple models together, so that you can edit all of them together, either because of the variation in the way the process is carried out geographically, or because of some regulatory requirement or some project requirement where it is a multi-year project and you want to have multiple copies of the target model. So the use case of variant is very different from the use case of versioning. Versioning is not about managing multiple copies of the model together. It is about taking the snapshot of how that model looks today to save it for the future in case you want to have a look at how the model looked in the past. It is from audit traceability perspective only. It's not for working on the same model. You cannot work on the previous versions of the model. They're all taken as a snapshot. So as part of versioning, if I look at it from a graphical perspective, in May the model looked like this, and then over time you created a version of it, and it created a snapshot of it. So this is open for editing and this is read only, and you can view it but you cannot edit it anymore. And then come June, you made some more changes to it. You added a new application to carry out a particular task, and then you created another version of it. And then in July you figured out that one of the roles is not required anymore, so you deleted that role, you added some data elements to it, and then you took another version of it. So all of these previous, this plus this and this and this and this and this, all of these are available for you to see as previous versions, but they're all read only. And the one that is available in the workspace is the one that you're working on. There is only one version of the model, the workspace version, which is open for editing. All the versions that you have created in the past are available for you to view as a reference, but they are not editable. So what does versioning entail in terms of what does it include? It includes all the object occurrences that are within the model. It includes the attributes and the placements. It also includes the free from graphics or logos or whatever else you have placed within the model. So it includes all of it. It creates a snapshot of that model, exactly how it looked like with all of its properties. However, you have an option to extend the versioning capability by including assignments to it as well. So if there was a model at level 4 with assigned level 5 models, then you can also include one level below. So you can have level 4 plus all its level 5s in one particular version. And you also have an option to include connected models. What that means is that if there's an organization unit that also features in an organization chart, you also have a if you have versioned a model with that organization unit, you can also extend to include that organizational chart as part of this particular version scope. So these are some options that you get when you create a version. The assignment level handling as well as the connection level handling. Okay, so you have the workspace version which is editable. You have the last version which is and all the previous change lists which are available for you to view. So use cases of versions. So when do you create a version? So having gone through all of this, the idea is that you want to create a snapshot of how the model looked at a particular time, and that is usually done when you're either managing change. So if you want to record changes, you either as a governance workflow or as part of correct mini workflow, a version is created and in either of them. So if you have submitted a model for approval via Connect Mini workflow, or if you have created your own governance release cycle management process, then all of them would be creating versions of the model to have that traceability of how that model looked like before the approval was carried out. Uh, it is uh, it is for documenting how the model has evolved over time. So the idea or the use case of versioning is to document how the model has changed over time. And there is an option to roll back to a previous version. So if you are unhappy with the change and you want to roll back to a previous version, it can be done, but it does need some clever tricks, and it's not challenging. It can be done, but you need an administrative right to do it. So if you're an administrator with database administration privilege, then you can roll back model versions to a previously known version. And as I said earlier, the whole idea about versioning is to be able to evidence that the model has changed over time and be able to compare and see how that model has evolved over time. The same report is also available for model comparison, which we use for variant comparison. In case of variant comparison, you're comparing two different models with two different GUIDs. In case of model comparison, you're comparing the different versions of the same model. Uh, and let me now go to the tool to show you the version management capability. Right. So let's stick with this particular model, say car loan application global. As variants, you also have the option of creating a version. So the versioning is either available here. You can select the model and then create version, or you can do this and versioning. You can also have multiple models included in the same version. So you can select one or more and do versioning as well. For sake of simplicity and reducing the time, I'll just take one into account and say version. If you look at the properties at the moment, there is a version that was created in the past, 23rd November, 3rd November 2023, so last November. And you can see the information here. When was it created? It's a change list 69. Who created it? And what time was it created? So all this information is available here as part of versions. And then you can click here and say versioning. And as I said earlier, the description is a must. So you need to maintain why you're creating this version. And it creates a version of that particular model. So what it has done is it has taken a snapshot of that particular model at that point in time. And you can see that here now there's a version 1 and now you have a version 2, and it's change list 72. So the earlier one was 69 and there are some versions in between, and this version 2 is part of this change list 72. And it was created on such and such day by me, which is system user. Now you can go ahead and make changes to this particular version. So for example, the business has come along and asked for some changes, or as part of a project, this particular process needs a change because it's being done differently or by different people, or you have added some new content to it, or you want to make changes to its properties or uh, regulatory needs, whatever. So, based on your change, you can make changes to it. Say again, I'll just add a task here. So I've added a new task, and perhaps that's the only change I have made to the newer version. So now, as earlier, you have an option to compare them, which I showed you earlier. So it's the same report, compare models. But in this case, I'm not comparing variants. Instead, I'm comparing versions. So so within the database, and I'm comparing different versions of the source model. So that's what I'm doing. And you can compare the workspace against the current version, which is what I want to do. Else, you also have an option to compare it against a previously known version. So you can click on change list and go back many versions to see how it has changed, say, over the years. So if you created multiple versions over time, you can select a previously known version, and again it gives you an option to select what kind of comparison you want to do between the two models. You can also compare a change in movement of the objects, their position, the attribute placement there. It's quite granular. You can do a whole lot of comparison. Let me just stick to the basics for now. Right, so it has created this copy, and, and let me post this previous one. Right. As again, what we saw earlier, you have all of these different tables where it says what was done. But I think this is what's most interesting. You can see that this is the red thing that has been added to the latest version versus the previous version. And how you know that is that you have this change list number against it. There's a change list number 69 is the previous version, whereas this is the workspace version. There's no change list number against it. So that's the latest version. That's the previous one, and you can see the difference that this red thing has been added to the current workspace versus what you had as part of the change list. There's nothing in here. So that's the way you would compare it, and you can see how the model has changed over time. And as before, which we saw earlier, you have an option to look at the previous versions. And if you want to see a previous version, you can click on it. It opens for you to view, but it opens read only. So you can go through it and study it to identify how it looked like and what was in there. But if you see on the top, it clearly says it's read only. You cannot edit this particular model. It's a snapshot in time, and though you can view it, you cannot edit it. What's available for editing is what's in the repository here, which is workspace. Now, when you publish out your database, if I go to the administrator, I can show that to you. While you publish your database, you can decide how you want to publish it to the wider community. I have been working in it as a designer up to now, but what you see here in terms of publishing databases, you can avoid publishing the changes to people. Instead, you can publish it as latest change list, in which case the users look at a process which has been versioned rather than what's being edited at the moment. So if you are following the Connect Mini workflow, where a model is versioned every time the model owner approves a particular change, then I think it's better to publish the model using the latest change list, so that while you're editing the models in this in the uh, designer repository, what's being published to the people is the approved version. So they don't see what's work in progress versus they just see what has been published as the latest change release. So as long as the model has been approved and new version has been created, that new version is going to be available for the end user to view. and they will not be able to see the changes that you are currently making to a workspace version. Uh, the only other thing that I also want to show you is about the change list. So if you want to see all the change lists that have been created for a particular database, it is a database property. So if you go to the databases in the enterprise admin, you can hover over the database that you're interested in. In my case, I just have one of them, and you can look at its properties. And one of the properties is change lists. So you can click on change list. It would show you all the changes that have taken place so far. So the first one was done, which you saw 69, which was my first version that I had created November last year, followed by three other versions that were created today. This is for demo, which I just created now. You can see the description here as well. For each one of them, you have an option to look at what was included in this change list. So if you look at this particular uh, change list number, it shows you what was included in that particular change list. If I go back to a previous version, in version 69, the whole database was versioned together, so you can see a whole lot of processes here, hundreds of processes that are part of this version. So as I said earlier, you can version either one model or you can select more than one models. Like in a project, you can have the whole project going live simultaneously. You can select all the processes and release them in one go in one version. So that will all be part of one change list. So that's where you would be able to see the change list and what was included in that particular change list, who created it, and the description of why was it created. Right. So I think that's it from me today.